more.
Right.
So it's all the right colors besides. Jim, I'd love to chat with you offline about the work that you're doing about starting a new high school. Sounds exciting. I think you said a thing, but it was very quiet.
I think I was on mute. I just said that would be great. Delightful. I would love to, Scott. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, for all of you, if I put my camera right where my screen is, then all you'll see is a white wall behind me. So to have some kind of background, I have it. So if my eyes are darting back and forth, it's not shifty eye syndrome. It's just, you know.
I have my second screen, and that's where I can kind of like see you, and then here on the computer is kind of like
You have a great bookcase.
very well. So.
Well, I think we're almost at 2 o'clock.
1:59.
1:59. Oh, we could get a countdown to blast off. How appropriate.
I think we just went to 2, Amy.
Okay. So welcome everyone to Aerospace Education, Inspiring the Workforce of Tomorrow. My name is Amy Spowert, and I'm the President and CEO of the National Aviation Hall of Fame.
And I'm Greg Principato, President and CEO of the National Aeronautic Association. This is the 6th in a series of webinars brought to you by a collaboration between the National Aviation Hall of Fame and the National Aeronautic Association. Our missions align with the most legendary people and most remarkable achievements in aviation and aerospace. To learn more about our organizations, please visit our websites right there. They're lonely. They want you to visit.
Members of the Hall of Fame and the NAA received advance notice of today's webinar and were able to sign up early for this limited opportunity. This will be the same for future webinars, so please become a member. As we go through the webinar today, please feel free to send your questions and we will do our best to work them into the conversation. Now let's go to the introductions, Greg.
The future of aviation and the American economy depends on a workforce well steeped in STEAM concepts and drawn from the entire talent pool. This webinar features accomplished and thoughtful leaders who will discuss how to make this a reality. Before COVID, there was great anxiety about whether there were enough people in the pipeline to fill needed aviation jobs. This may or may not have changed, and we'll explore that. To help us examine all this, we have an amazing panel for you today.
Shella Condino has been teaching AP Physics at Oakton High School in Virginia since 2017. Prior to that, Shella taught at El Paso, Texas, and then Presidio High School in Texas. In 2003, Shella began developing ways to introduce rocketry into her curriculum. Her creativity and passion for motivating her students led to a program that earned Presidio national recognition, including an invitation to the White House to meet President Obama. She continues to mentor kids at Presidio while sharing her talent at Oakton. Shella students have gone on to work for aerospace's biggest names, and in 2011, Sheila was chosen as the National Aviation Hall of Fame's Crossfield Aerospace Teacher of the Year.
Jim Gregory is chair of the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at The Ohio State University. He designs innovative and international hands-on learning experiences for aerospace engineering students and recently produced a public video series titled The Science of Flight, together in collaboration with the Great Courses and the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum. In 2017, he led a team of students and researchers that set national and world records with an autonomous drone. Jim is the 2020 recipient of the NAA's Brewer Trophy, which recognizes significant contributions of enduring value to aerospace education in the United States. John Lappford is the founder and CEO of Electra.Aero. He previously launched the Daedalus project in 1985 and was founder and CEO of Aurora Flight Sciences from 1989 to 2019. He also co-founded Athena Technologies. John is the immediate past president of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. He is also a guiding force behind the Team America Rocketry Challenge, or TARC, a model rocketry competition for students from 6th grade to 12th grade, and sponsored by the Aerospace Industries Association and the National Association of Rocketry. TARC received the 2014 NAA Brewer Trophy and the 2020 National Aviation Hall of Fame Spirit of Flight Award.
Scott McComb is the Raisbeck Aviation High School Science Department Chair, founding coach and past chair of the Washington State Science Olympiad, Raisbeck's AIAA and Green Energy Team Advisor. Scott developed and continues to refine a program of physics and flight and aerospace engineering that includes encouraging community connections and creative problem-solving techniques that challenge students with activities that include designing and building heat shields, Martian rovers, virtual aircraft, and real solar-powered cars. Underachiever. A lifelong learner, Scott earned his pilot's license and interned at Boeing Flight Test and Blue Origin. In 2019, Scott was chosen as the National Aviation Hall of Fame's Crossfield Aerospace Educator of the Year. Oh, what a panel, Greg. What a
Absolutely.
panel.
Absolutely. Take it away.
Okay, so we want to get things started here with a poll. I hope you all are ready. Amy, let's go ahead and put up our poll number 1. When should students be introduced to STEAM concepts? Elementary school, junior high school, not at all.
If anybody votes for not at all, we should kick them off.
I know, they're out. Shella, we're going to go ahead and start with you. How can we get elementary age children interested in aviation and aerospace?
I believe there are many ways where you can actually engage young children and expose them to aviation and aerospace. So for example, the teachers, they can begin teaching basic and, fun crafts in school. They could do paper airplanes, they could build paper rockets, especially for the little ones. They can also include, in the next grade levels, they can also include maybe during their storytelling activities, they can include history of flight. I always loved the story about those WASP, those women air service pilots. I find that they are very fascinating, and being able to meet them in person, it's even great. Now, parents too, together with teachers, can also take students to exposures like field trips to, let's say, museums. They can visit airport, galleries. I grew up having that passion for aviation and introduction because of the television. So back in 1979, that was the first time we had television in at least in my homes. I was able to get to see the anniversary, 10-year anniversary of the landing on the moon. So, we also have what we call NASA TV. So it's a lot of exposure, early exposure and firsthand experiences that I think, would be very imperative, especially on this very nurturing stage. It's kind of it's essential. The kid's brain, elementary, middle school, they're very, like sponges. They absorb anything. And the good thing is they have nothing to lose, and they always love to have fun. So if I may tell a quick story, I remember doing a STEM design challenge in Presidio. It's a district-wide, and it's the most awaited event in the town. Of course, besides rocket launches. But in the program, every grade level was represented by students, and from 3-year-olds, because Presidio has a program for 3-year-olds at that time, all the way to 12th grade. And one of the challenges that I created was in the engineering section was to design an aircraft carrier. So it has like a load of people, and the people are represented by ping pong balls, and the airplane with, with paper. Everybody received the same amount of material in the same bag, the same amount of time, the building and everything, and the testing. But who do you think did the best, not the best, but the first design of the aircraft? The little ones. And really the middle schoolers and the high school just took that idea, and it wasn't technically sound design, but they have it in there because they have nothing to lose. They're not afraid of testing, prototyping, because they're not afraid to fail. They just had so much fun. So I think introducing them into
Amy,
world early on is a great thing.
Amy, well, would you show the results of the poll? And Scott, oh yeah, elementary school. Scott,
Good answer.
Go
They
elementary.
can stay. Everybody can stay.
Scott, I wanted to give you a chance to maybe if you have a follow-up answer to that question, because I know, just like Shella said, some unique challenges that she put out there to younger kids. I know you put out challenges as well.
So not specifically to elementary age students, but I just want to reiterate the things that Sheila was saying, right? This notion of getting enthusiastic and excited about the kinds of opportunities that are available, right? The fact that we can take a thing and that's heavier than air and keep it in the air for a really, really, really long time is not magic, but it sure seems like it, right? So what is that thing that causes a plane to fly, right? So in terms of understanding the world and being curious about the world, right? These are things that elementary age children are so enthusiastic about anyway, right? So I think as older people, if we model that curiosity and that enthusiasm, I think that goes an awfully long way towards modeling what that curiosity looks like, right? So to foster this sense of wonder, not just with our young people, but also with our older children as well, is a really powerful step in the next direction.
I love that. John, is there any kind of unique ways or any magic ways of getting kids interested into aerospace and aviation that aren't necessarily into it right from the first touch?
Sure. Well, I think one of the key points is that when you're growing up, you don't actually know what you're interested in, and most people have no idea what they want to do with their lives. And so a big part of education is broadening people's horizons, exposing them to new ideas, new ways of thinking, and new opportunities. And so I think the first thing is exposing people to the types of things that we do, the excitement that's going on. Even just this week, I mean, we've had SpaceX launching a new experimental rocket that lands itself, and we've had NASA announce, the 18 astronaut candidates for the first Artemis moon landing mission. So just amazing. I think the second big thing in terms of why you want to teach science and education here is that being technically literate is so important to being a citizen in our modern democracies, that it may not matter whether you're an actual rocket scientist or you want to follow that pursuit, but you do need to understand the basics of the scientific process, the skills of critical thinking, what data is, what a hypothesis is. And we see that in the news just every day. The great issues that our country's confronting this year, whether it's COVID, whether it's how you count numbers in a small differences in a statistical sample, whether it's what's happening with the climate, those all require a good grounding in the scientific process in order to be good participatory citizens in a democracy. And anything that gets kids interested in that, I'm all for.
Absolutely. Greg, do you want to go ahead with the second poll question, or shall I?
Why don't you go ahead with that one? It looks like your name's next to it. So
Okay.
why don't you go ahead?
Amy, why don't you go ahead and throw that up? And I actually found out the answer to this because I did it myself. How many colleges and universities offer aerospace engineering degrees in the United States? And I sure wish this would have been harder for me to figure out, but it wasn't. I'm gonna go ahead and throw this to Jim because he's the most relevant. Amy, go ahead and throw up the answers for this because I think this is pretty remarkable. That the answer is 28. There are only 28 colleges and universities that offer aerospace engineering degrees in the United States. Jim, could you maybe elaborate on this and share your thoughts, and then maybe talk about how we can get more valuable partnerships between high schools and colleges or universities to ensure you know, there's places for these kids who are interested to go because they don't have much choice, right? So.
Right, you know, and aerospace engineering is still a very compelling field for people to go into, and you know, there is some consolidation. I think in some places you find synergy between mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering, and truly the aerospace industry is very interdisciplinary. The industry itself needs people from electrical engineering for making, you know, designing the avionics and so on. But you know, I think addressing the opportunities for the students and engagement with high schools in particular. I love the thoughts that Sheila, Scott, and John were sharing about the curiosity, appealing to the curiosity of the students and to the sense of wonder and the human spirit. I think all of those are wonderful things that are throughout aviation and aerospace. I'm just thinking of one example that I often give students in my class and to high school students and younger when I'm interacting with them. I'll ask them, who was the first woman who flew around the world? And it's surprising how few people know that. And perhaps, you know, even among the panel here, our gut reaction is Amelia Earhart. But then if we pause for a second or two, we realize, oh, wait, she didn't quite make it, sadly. And then very few people know that it was actually Jerry Mock in 1964. From Columbus, Ohio.
There you go.
An alumna of The Ohio State University.
The Ohio State University.
So we're very proud that you know, Jerry had that sense of adventure. She was, I read her autobiography. She was inspired by traveling the world, meeting people in, you know, I think she flew her airplane and made a stopover in Libya, if I remember correctly, or somewhere in North Africa, in Saudi Arabia, where she wasn't able to drive, but she could fly a plane. And so, you know, these really interesting stories, I think, captivate the students' attention and energy across all spectrum.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because I think it's something John said about, you know, the importance of learning the scientific method. And you know, it sounds like Sheila and Scott do a great job of that in their programs from, you know, elementary through high school. But the exciting thing about learning the scientific method, of course, is that it applies across disciplines, which is what, you know, John was saying. And it sounds like we're all in agreement that that's a great way to go. Scott, how do we replicate really, and I'm giving this to you for a reason, because I think you could have pom-poms somewhere in your house. How do we replicate teachers like you? What do we do?
We don't need to replicate teachers like me, right? There are passionate teachers and dedicated teachers all over the world and all over the country. What we need is to give them space for experimentation and exploration. We need people who are not just given permission, but who are actively encouraged to go reach out to industry experts, right? The learning that I've been fortunate to have, very little of it comes from, you know, any innate passion or any innate ability on my part, as much as it is me having the courage and the encouragement from really visionary leadership to say things like, go do this thing, right? So I had the opportunity to do geochemistry and geophysical research in Alaska for a couple of summers. I didn't pay for that, right? This was someone who said a thing and said, do you know that this opportunity is available? And my principal said, we can find a way to make this happen, right? I didn't pay for my pilot's license. My principal said, so if you're going to teach, if you're going to teach physical science and physics of flight to our young people, my comment was, then you should probably find a way to make that happen to help me get my pilot's license. And it took, 4 emails to go from, you don't know very much about flight, but you're enthusiastic, into here is a $10,000 scholarship essentially to learn how to fly. There is a huge, the support educators have, but don't know about, is phenomenal. And I think part of the challenge is making that available. Teaching is a hard job. It's a really hard job. Right, between the day-to-day, what does curriculum look like? What does assessment look like? How do we build relationships with students? how do we help students build relationships with each other? Like, these are not trivial things. And then, so then to suddenly ask, how do you then go ahead and reach out to other people, right? Teachers need help with that, right? So replicating truly passionate and talented teachers, I'll say again that I don't think that, right, that's the piece that needs replicating. What needs replicating is the opportunity for teachers to make connections with community, right? That I don't know how many people are on the panel today, but my guess is with a series of emails that we could reach a network of potentially thousands of people.
Mhm.
And if there were someone at the school picking up the phone saying, yes, we have a place for you to help, that would go a long way towards addressing, I think, what your question is.
So, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
I was gonna say, Amy, it looks like some of the questions that are coming in on the Q&A in the chat really sort of follow along with that. Like, teachers who may not be well steeped in aerospace or whatever, but, like you said, Scott, they've got passion. How do you find, resources for them? How do you give them the time to do that, with other priorities and that kind of thing?
Well, I think John Langford wants to hear what Sheila has to say about that, because talk about a passionate teacher with very little resources. Tell us what you did with your dreams of growing up in a very underserved district. Oh, you're on mute, Sheila.
Okay. Well, I'm a true testament to that, actually. So I got the, being born poor, but having that big dreams of mine of maybe flying to space in the future. And then going and teaching into an underserved community like Presidio, which is like 4 hours away from the nearest Walmart at that time, because now I heard it's about 2.5 hours away. But it's the passion in me, that if I cannot be successful on my own, maybe I would be able to at least help the other teachers and see my dream live on somebody else who probably, could do it. So like, most of the time, I remember during that time, Presidio High School were not performing very well academically. And so I felt like, giving these kids these opportunities, even if it's not available within the area, I myself seek out on the outside and brought it into the school. When we did career day, most of the careers that are over there locally are nothing that's like, professional level, but I have nothing against that, because there still are good profession. But I did virtual career day, call people that I know and have with connections and tell them, hey, if you're in Columbia and you're an engineer and you're a friend of mine, can you please introduce the career to these students of mine? And there you go. So it's just a matter of, teacher going out and beyond. So if the students actually see that you yourself as a teacher is passionate about something, I think it will rub off to them, and they themselves would feel like, you know what, if she wants me to do this, she wants it so bad, I will also, do the same thing. So I tell them resilience, persistence is definitely has to be in there, and it has to start from us, the adult, so that these kids would actually emulate us. And yeah.
Yes, someone once said, one of the best leaders I've ever been around, that the essential element of leadership is passion. And that's certainly, I think, true in this case. Jim, can we talk a little bit, that we're talking about a lot about elementary and high school and all that. Obviously, there are great universities like yours all over, and even branches of great, driving around Ohio not all that long ago, saw branches of your university in different places. Can you talk a little bit about how the university and the university system in a state can work? Have you seen it work with high schools and even elementary schools? If you have any stories like that, or some other ideas you might have about how that partnership could work?
Yeah, partnerships are key in creating pathways for students, and especially as we're opening our eyes to the varied backgrounds that people are coming from, and how to make that transition as removing any unnecessary barriers from that transition. We want to enable students. So you mentioned the satellite campuses for Ohio State. There are a handful across the state, and those are actually a tremendous pathway for where students can stay close to home for the first year or two, have a reduced cost of education, still have high quality coursework and engagement with faculty, and then transition to the main campus in Columbus when a couple years into the program. But not just the OSU satellite campuses, but also our local community colleges, and at the secondary level with high schools. And we're actively exploring partnerships with the local community schools to build some collaborative joint programs. And much like the exemplar that Scott is at the Raisbeck Academy, that is one of those key ones that we look to as a leader in how we shape this program of giving the younger students opportunities to work side by side with older students, taking classes together, even working on projects together. We're very early in forming this, but these are some of the kind of the exciting, inspiring things that we look forward to building together. But it's all about partnerships.
It was interesting you mentioned community colleges too, and the satellite, campuses and all that kind of thing. And I think with some passionate leadership, whether it's at the education level or the political level, more of those partnerships can be pushed. By the way, we're getting a number of questions which really relate to the questions we're now talking about on the chat and the Q&A. But I do have to say, Sheila, that Janet Nieto writes to say that you were a great inspiration to her during high school. So I know, my brother and my sister are both teachers. I know, the reward really is hearing that. You get that kind of feedback. And so I just wanted to make sure, if you didn't see that, Sheila, that you saw. And Jim, Ohio State University is getting a lot of shout outs, a lot of great shout outs on the chat and the Q&A as well.
And Scott, make a note, there's a gentleman called Dave Ginsburg in that is he's a retired aerospace engineer. Like, he's in Washington, get his name.
I wrote that down. I wrote it down already. Well, I wanted to follow up on Jim's comment and this power of partnerships, right? So here we are, we're in a time of COVID, and it's, on the one hand, it would be easy to throw up our hands and say, oh, what the insert expletive. And right, that doesn't, going back to Sheila's point, that doesn't serve us super well in terms of modeling passion and resilience and those kinds of things. And so, right, it's hard, but we're also not in this alone. We're going back to Dave's point, right? How do I have we have an untapped community of people who are passionate about education and people who are really well steeped in aerospace. And the question is, how do we connect those two things? Right, and the simple answer is to ask. Right, so on the teacher side, right, we have, I don't know how many teachers are in the room, but there are professional organizations for virtually everything, right? So I teach at a school called Raisbeck Aviation High School, and right, our theme, we slap the label aviation on the front door, and now suddenly people who are excited about aviation and getting involved with education know where they can start to plug in. And but right, you could just as easily be at local high school A down the street. So for the teachers, all you need to do is decide the thing that you're excited about, right? When we talk about STEAM, for those folks who aren't as familiar, right, it's about connecting the work that students are doing in the classroom with work beyond the classroom walls, right? So in the case, Amy gave an introduction and she said, right, students are building pint-sized heat shields to protect chocolate bunnies from the heat of reentry, right? That's been a long time project of mine. And the number of students who say to me, when am I ever going to use this? It's been 15 years because they know exactly why and where they'll use this information, right? And the same thing is true if you're studying kinematics and trying to make an airplane take off. The same thing is true if you're trying to understand circuits and figuring out how to make an electric car, a solar powered car, make the lapses efficiently. So for the teachers in the room, find the thing that you're trying to teach. And then really in 15 minutes, you can find probably 20 different professional organizations in your region. People who are close, people who are enthusiastic, people who are looking for ways to give back. And right, for the price of an email, right, it might take you 20 minutes to write that email and say, here's what I'm looking for. You'll have more volunteers than you know what to do with. And I'm not gonna lie, like it takes some energy and time to cultivate those relationships, but the payoff is life-changing, right? What students walk away with is a vision of themselves as being able to do that thing, and B, understanding that the work they're doing now in the classroom is work they might do later. Right, and in some cases it might be they decide they don't want to do that thing, but far more likely is they're going to decide this is a path that I might pursue. That was a little longer than I intended, but it's something I'm passionate about.
No, I think that's great. Somebody actually put up there, and we do have I'm not ready for the third poll question yet because it gets into some of the obstacles and so forth, but somebody put up there, and I think there's been a couple of variations on the theme put up there that, I mean, learning to fly and getting time in an airplane, it's hard, it's expensive. And I think, and the subject matter seems so intimidating to some people, right? But I think what we're talking about here is there are ways to do this without necessarily buying time in an airplane, without, protecting chocolate Easter bunnies, which I think is wonderful. I guess if it doesn't work out, you at least get the syrup. But, it's, that there are ways, and John, I know, through TARC, you've been able, and Sheila, and all four of you have been able to bring people in into this in non-intimidating ways.
So should we go ahead and go to the third poll question then? Because I think it goes right in, and I can't wait to hear what John says.
All right.
Like, I feel like we've all been having this big buildup for what John Langford will add to this.
So you see the question there. What do you think is the biggest obstacle to teaching aviation-related STEM? And lack of funds and resources, support from administrators, and lack of knowledgeable teachers. We've sort of touched on all these a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll give people a moment to answer. And Amy, as you mentioned, John has some things to say, I think, about it, to say about it. And John, can you talk about that? I know I've known you a while now. You like to talk about using aviation to teach STEM. Can you talk about the obstacles to doing that?
Sure. Well, I think I'd like to start with what I think are not obstacles to doing that, or at least shouldn't be obstacles to doing that. And probably the first one of those is the money. I mean, certainly it's been mentioned that going out and taking flying lessons, very expensive. We kind of get that. But there are many approachable ways to bring effective STEM teaching within the budget of pretty much any community in the country. Shella gave a perfect example of that, and we'll probably come back and talk more about that. But a couple of points I wanted to really make here, and one is that everybody, any teachers on this call, or anyone who knows a teacher, should go and look at the AIAA Foundation, because the AIAA Foundation gives money to teachers. There are a series of classroom grants up to $500 a piece, specifically for the purchase of STEM type materials and projects. And that's open now. There's actually a closing date. It's currently on an annual basis, but closes on the 15th of January. And the AIAA has a lot of money available for that. Alexandra D'Imperio, write that name down. Alex D'Imperio is the person to contact at the AIAA about that. And I'd love for the viewers on this webinar to flood the AIAA with applications for funding through that. Another part of that is lesson plans, and there are a number of good, effective sources for lessons plans. One of the ones that is really making a lot of progress, particularly in this pandemic time, are the folks over at Estes Industries. Particularly another name everybody should write down is Nicole Bayer, B-A-Y-E-U-R, at educator at estesrockets.com, and she's leading an initiative with a number of working with the AIAA and a number of experienced teachers to put forward a modern set of lesson plans that speak to the kinds of affordable things we're talking about doing. I want to just say things have changed so much since, you know, in the last few years, I just want to hold up one little thing. This is something called a pocket lab. It's made by a company that does science innovations. And this is a very small data logger that measures kinds of parameters. It's essentially all the things you need to go in to make an inertial measurement unit, if you were, which is now within the realm of elementary school kids.
Who doesn't want to do that?
About $100. And it's an example of how much things have changed even in the lifetime of the people on this call, that this type of thing is available in well-integrated lesson plans and accessible to literally kids that start in, you know, 5th grade or so. And then the final thing, so we talked about sort of money, lesson plans, and the third is just sort of the opportunities for connecting. And again, we've mentioned a couple of times the Aerospace Industries Association, the AIA, and the National Association of Rocketry, and their combined effort for the Team America Rocketry Challenge, aimed primarily at high schools, but also middle schools, and providing a great organizational construct for teachers and groups who might not quite be sure how to launch into this into this area. And so I would recommend the AIA and the NAR to everybody who's looking at this as well. And they help address things like not only the sort of structure of it, but also how you find flying fields like that.
Amy, do we have the answers to those poll questions first? And oh my goodness,
Interesting.
very interesting. And by the way, for those of you who are listening in, Nicole Baer has put up several links to various programs. I don't know if everybody can see that or not, but we'll figure that out. Shelley, you have I think an interesting story, and we're going to focus a little more in a minute. Some questions Amy has for teaching during COVID, but this is more of a general issue. You teach now at Oakton High School in Northern Virginia, not far from where I live, in a community with a lot of resources. You came from a community that didn't have quite that many resources. You talked a little bit about it earlier. Can you talk a little bit more about teaching some of these things in a school district that doesn't have a lot of resources and may not feel like they can really get their arms around it, but you clearly succeeded in doing it. You're muted again. I'm sorry. Sheila, you're muted.
I tried to be respectful to the others. That's why.
There we go.
But yeah, it's quite a big shift on my experience. Coming from a very under-resourced school district in Presidio. It's the 4th poorest school district in the state of Texas, and then moving on to one of the richest county in the whole country. But there still is like similarities though. I've seen some similar, even if we do have in Northern Virginia a lot of resources, it doesn't mean you still get a lot of funding. It still is based on what the community has and what the club is actually going to raise. But going into the challenges in teaching on under-resourced school districts, there's just so many in general. Like in my experience, I know Dr. Lappford mentioned about money is not necessarily an issue. It really is not an issue, but realistically, it takes a while before it actually reach rural school district. I mean, I taught in an economically disadvantaged rural border town school, and we have lack of resources, lack of funding, and not just that, lack of expertise as well. I couldn't tap into anybody who has like experience in aviation and aerospace. It was a little bit difficult. So, doing programs or classroom activities, especially programs that are after school programs, would require some cost. And, most rural school districts have their budget cuts and priorities when it comes to allocation of resources. I mean, Texas is more of a sports country, so they prioritize allocating budget in there rather than doing academic activities or so. So it's a little bit challenging for us. But like what I was saying, if you are a passionate teacher and you really want to expose your students to this wonderful kind of experience, it doesn't matter being served, being a minority, whether there's lack of expertise or even language barrier, it's not, it's not an issue. It's not a barrier, or I could say it's not an excuse, because opportunities, including the challenges, should be provided to all, regardless of the race, regardless of gender or economic background. So there should be that encouragement of that climate where, there's equity, both in gender, racial diversity, and inclusivity. So I felt like it should not be an excuse. We have to figure out. And I have done that myself together with the community of Presidio. It's not just me, but I was able to be, lucky enough that I got supported by administrators. But there are some issues in some border schools too, or economically disadvantaged schools, where they have minimal support from their administrators because they have other priorities besides academic activities and programs. I'm just very thankful. When I was in Presidio, I experienced that with some principals, but God is so good that I was able to convince them that there is an impact in this particular activities, in these programs, that will benefit the students. So all I need is to have them on board, and I will figure out a way. And same way here in Northern Virginia, I am very lucky to have very good administrators in Oakton High School, because they understand that there's a need, and students, they can improve their lives. There's a good impact of this program in the students' lives.
So
go ahead.
Stella, I want to follow up with you real quick, because we get a lot of comments. We're getting a lot of comments about your story, and it is pretty inspirational. So I just want to give you a moment to talk about, I heard you say and you said it in a nice way, no excuses, right? But you were teaching at the most, I hate to use the word poor, but underserved school
Correct.
you could possibly imagine, on the border with Mexico. And I would love for you to talk about, just briefly, what it's like to take kids from there to the White House to meet the president. And I know you sent me a list of about 10 students that you have that are working at Boeing, that are, that have big, amazing jobs in aviation and aerospace, and have been part of your rocketry program. So.
And Shella,
Yes, sir.
Tell the story of how you got to the job at Presidio too, because I think that's an important part of your story as well.
Okay. Well, I do love Presidio. Everybody should know that. And that's the highlight of my teaching career. Moving from El Paso, everybody knows that I came from the Philippines. So I'm a non-working immigrant. I'm sorry, working non-immigrant. I'm a non-immigrant at that time. So I'm a permanent resident now, moving on to my citizenship. But it was a big challenge because I need to have that security that I could stay in the United States. So I decided I wanted to teach to a place where I could be of most help. At that time, I thought Houston would be the best place. I got accepted in the international, it's Houston International Academy. But then when I went to Presidio, I felt like, oh, there's a need there, and so I decided to teach in Presidio and stay there for 8 years. And I found that there is a need for this program because, a lot of the kids they don't have much to do after school. And again, it's economically, geographically, it's such a, so much of a disadvantage. But through our program, we were able to do well simply because the fact that we don't have the money, which is not an issue for us, because we decided we're going to do simulation first and save as much as we could and perfect those simulation and build our rockets from the simulations that we did. We got, recognized in the national level. And at that time, it's not sinking in my head because I felt like I am just doing whatever an ordinary teacher all over the world should be doing. Oh,
And there's a picture.
Well done.
Yeah, sorry,
And,
to preempt, I just wanted everybody to see this, which is one of my just all-time favorite pictures of STEM education, because so much went into this. And so, Shelley, just keep going, but I wanted people to see this while you talk.
But I wanted to say that even if, yes, we made it to, we got selected. And how did we get selected? We did not even win first place in the national competition. But there are people who believe that our story is like a Cinderella story that could inspire many, thanks to especially Dr. Jang Langford. If you would notice from the t-shirt of the kids, it says Aurora. So he possible for my students to be recognized and get to present to the President of the United States at that time, President Barack Obama. So it felt like it's such a great accomplishment. And these girls are amazing. Janet is now a chemist in Michigan. Ana Nieto works as a mechanical engineer at Aurora Flight Sciences. My daughter, Winell, in the middle, is already graduating in electrical engineering from Purdue University. And not just them, but many of the students in Presidio who became part of the program decided to move on, move forward, you know, get a degree, not just finish high school. At that time, we only have 14% graduation rate, but before I left, we had a record of 100% graduation rate from the border town of Presidio. And a lot of the kids, you know, they did not necessarily have to be engineers, but a lot of them turned out being professional and successful in their own way, because the program itself doesn't only hone skills for engineering. It also hones skills for communication. You know, it hones skills in organization, the team building, the collaboration, all of those basic skills that are required in, you know, in the workforce in order for them to succeed in the workforce. And that is something that I am very proud of. And yeah, very, very proud of. I may be teaching in one of the richest, you know, school districts in the whole country, but that passion that I have in Presidio is the same. I do have great students in Oakton. Just recently, you know, we got selected again for the NASA SLI. My team leader, you know, Landon, oh my God, he could carry the whole team. He could be a good CEO. I am telling you, kids that
Lappford wants his name.
Landon Wheeler. Oh my goodness. He could just, you know, he sets up all of our virtual meetings. You know, it is just an amazing group of people. And I think we need to trust our new generation. We need to trust that these kids are also caring for the betterment of our world. And so they are also figuring out in their own way, what can they do to become that ethical and global citizen that would, you know, make the world better in the future. And I have so much trust in them. And I am here as a humble teacher. That's all I could say. I am not extremely knowledgeable, but I will always be there for them, even if they find that the technical literacy is difficult, because they have me in their physics classes. It is difficult, but work hand in hand with your teachers, because, you know, you will go a long way.
Jim Gregory, I feel sorry for you because I'm going to follow that up with you, and she's a hard act to follow. Sheila, you're amazing. But Jim, what do you do whenever you get a student, like the students that Sheila and Scott are sending your way to the Ohio State University, or Penn State, either one? Just kidding. But how do you make sure that they're ready for their CEO and their captains of industry and their...
Yeah, you know, Sheila, what an inspiring story. I love that. And I can see why the students have flourished and blossomed under your watch and your nurturing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's so much that's done so early on to set the trajectory of these young people's lives and careers. Sometimes I feel like at the university level, we're just kind of putting on the capstone, and the final, you know, push towards you know, independence as a contributing engineer, in our case for aerospace engineering. What we're paying a lot of attention to right now is the climate that we have in our university and what we see in the workplace. You know, we recognize the field of aerospace is typically, traditionally, white male dominated. And that's there's some inherent things there that we're working on addressing to make our environment where people of all backgrounds and all races are, feel like this is family. This is where we belong. We're a part of this. Some of that is a very challenging, roll up our sleeves work to change the culture and the climate. Some of it is very targeted, direct support of building community where people can see themselves. And a lot of it is finding the right faculty that we can hire to be role models and exemplars for what a successful aerospace engineer looks like. Yeah, this is a gradual transformation of our discipline of aerospace engineering to one that is more representative of the United States of America. So this is going to be probably the work of a generation to make these changes, but it's an exciting journey that we're on.
Right. Sorry, I think Greg's gonna go ahead next. I just want to let everybody know that we are getting some outstanding resources while people are talking of foundations like the NAA Foundation and all kinds of resources for teachers. I mean, this is better than expected. That it's in the chat, it's in the questions. We're capturing all that, and we're going to have it available to everybody on the webinar and on our websites after this. And also educational resources like PBS Media, AOPA's high school, their high school curriculum, UCF Orlando and National Girls have all been mentioned. So Greg, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure that people, this is just getting more and more inspiring.
No problem. I don't think I've ever seen anywhere near this much activity on the chat and on the questions. It's fabulous, and people are contributing so many ideas and links and stuff to help everybody. Yeah, we only have about 10 minutes left. Amy predicted, by the way, for the audience, that we would never have enough time to cover all the material that we thought about, and she's absolutely right. We're going to have to leave some things undiscussed. So while we put the fourth poll question up, I also want to ask Scott a question that, based on something Jim just said, kind of a quick answer, and then we'll go to some final questions. The final question, the poll question, according to the Smithsonian Science Education Center, what percentage of high school graduates don't meet benchmark readiness for one or more college courses in math, science, reading, or English? 40%, 50%, 70%, or 80%? While people are answering that, and I have a couple of general questions to end this with, but Scott, Jim talked about changing the culture and all that, and part of that was changing the culture of, of aviation, and making sure, as we said right at the top of the show here, broadening the talent pool, right, from the entire talent pool, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, everywhere. We need to do that. Jim talked about that a little bit and broadening the culture. We don't have as much time probably as I'd like to have to hear the story, but Scott, you talked a little bit about your school district and over the summer, the mandate you were given to look at social justice issues and broadening the net and everything in terms of involving all of society. Can you talk about that just a little bit before we go into the final part of the webinar?
Yeah, sure. So very briefly, as you know, this spring was rocked by COVID as well as by protests surrounding issues of social justice and how do we make sure that that each of our citizens are represented and protected and served by the greater good. And so our district, just outside of Seattle, with a predominantly minority population, transitioned explicitly to having a focus on anti-racism as one of our focuses for the year. And so trying to figure out how to marry project-based learning with aviation and aerospace, as well as issues of social justice, became one of the driving things we were looking for. And speaking of tricky challenges, and so what I ended up doing with my 9th grade class is shifting from saving the chocolate bunny from the heat of reentry to solving airplane noise, right? So my school district surrounds SeaTac Airport, and airplane noise is an issue, right? There are 800 aircraft operations a day during COVID, and closer to 1,400 when there's not COVID, right? And that has an impact. And so how do students get involved with either understanding the science, doing something with the engineering, or being an advocate, having understood the issues, right? So to help reframe students, instead of being something things are done to, as being agents of change and figuring out how do they A, understand, and then B, engage with and change their futures. And I think that's part of what STEM education does, and I think that's part of what the mandate for education and social justice looks like.
Well, I think that's an important point. It's not just, each part of education has its own little bucket, and you can only look here or there, that it all works together, right? Do we have the results of that poll question? Well, those of you who said 80% get a gold star and who said 70% get a silver star, because when Amy went and did the research, the answer is 78%. So we have some work to do, right? And with teachers like we have on the on this webinar, from K through 12 teachers through college, through people who teach even after they leave, like John does, in one way or another. We have our work cut out for us, but we have great people on the job. So I want to ask, we only have about 7 minutes left, 6-7 minutes left. And I'll ask two questions, one to Jim, one to John, and we'll just sort of sit back, and Jim, maybe you can go first and then John, but Jim, the question to you is, can you talk about any common threads in students that have gone on to succeed in aviation and aerospace, students that you've had? And then John, you're out there hiring people, right? So what is the skill that you're looking for? Is there something missing? What can we do to, besides some of the great stories we've heard from these amazing high school teachers we have on here, what can we do to inspire the next generation? So Jim, if you can go first and talk about some of the common threads you've seen in students who've gone on to succeed, and then John, if you could take us home with that last question.
Boy, that's a really challenging one. There's a lot of students who succeed in many different ways, fulfilling their dreams. One thread, perhaps, is those who take calculated risks will really do well. And I say calculated very intentionally, to learn through the failures, and to create safe space to make those failures. And especially, safety matters with flight vehicle systems. I'm just thinking of the SpaceX Starship launch earlier this week. We saw the fiery end of that, but also the jubilation of, wow, look at all the data that we got out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have learned from some pretty interesting maneuvers for a rocket. So I think taking those calculated risks to allow failure to happen safely, sometimes that takes a lot of courage, but I've seen that in some of our students who've gone off and done big things.
But isn't that fascinating though? That's exactly what Sheila answered to the first question about how finding success among students is often with the youngest ones, because they're not afraid to take the risks that the kind of middle school and high school and college kids and adults, we're all afraid, right? But you're saying it's those ones like the younger ones. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Great answer. I'm like taking notes. John, I'm sorry I cut you off. Probably. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I wanted to just kind of make two closing points. One, with the direct answer, I think, to the question that Greg asked was, what are employees looking for? Well, I think employees are looking for passion. That's a word that we started off with, and you've heard a lot throughout this. Critical thinking skills, not rote memorization, but critical thinking skills and hands-on experience. And it matters less how you get those three things than having those three things. Within the disciplines, I'd have to say it's anything with AI or robotics, and particularly the combination of robotics and aeronautics that's particularly important. In terms of sort of closing out the thoughts, I wanted to sort of close with the idea of why why companies do these sort of STEM things, right? One is for workforce development. And the other big part is to build the diversity. I mean, I hope people can see, I just put up, this is an almost cartoonish gender stereotype from, these are actually from the 50s.
One of them is from the year I was born. Jeez.
Yeah. and you shake your head, but this is what we, this is how it worked in the past. And this is the sort of cultural things we're overcoming. on the right, these are the two most recent U.S. international model rocket teams that were sent overseas by the National Association of Rocketry. They have, there's a junior competition and there's a senior competition, and the age break is 18. So this is the under 18 category. And, you know, the top one is from the 2016 competition team we sent to Ukraine. And the bottom one is 2018 team that we sent to Poland. And you can see they don't look anything like the covers on the left-hand side of the page. And I think that's representative of the challenge and the progress that we are all making. And this takes everybody involved in this, because we really do change these lives one at a time. And it's only by starting young and building the passion, the creativity, the critical thinking in kids one at a time that you get the kinds of things at the other end, where if you look at the Apollo program, it was 100% white men. You look at the shuttle and the ISS, and much more diverse program, but nothing like what the demographics of the country. And if you look at the Artemis 18 announced yesterday, 9 men and 9 women, that's really where we need to drive the whole industry. So it's a very large scale challenge, but it's also so personalized and individual, because we really do this, you know, one life at a time.
Yeah, I think that's what Amy and I meant at the beginning too, by talking about the whole talent pool, right?
Outstanding. Well, this webinar, I don't want it to end,
No.
but we must. And Greg and I are so grateful. You all are making the Hall of Fame in the NAA amazing, because we should have a follow-up webinar. Thank you everyone for attending. We have a survey that will go up, and you know, like I said a little bit ago, we will capture all the resources that were shared in the chat and in the questions. We'll make those available to everyone. And from the Hall of Fame and the NAA, we wish everyone a very happy holiday. And thank you so much to John, to Jim, to Scott, and Sheila. That's how you went down my screen.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to the NAA and to the Aviation Hall of Fame for organizing this.
Thank you for hosting.
Very much. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's fabulous. Thank you.